Hello everybody, good morning. Ceci n'est pas une interview, this is not an interview. To quickly explain that, we've known each other with Hans-Peter Feldmann for actually more than 20 years, and for me, meeting Hans-Peter in the late 80s was one of the reasons, really, one of the main reasons to become a curator. He participated in my first show in the kitchen, where I invited 7 artists to exhibit in my kitchen, and the show lasted 3 months and had 29 visitors. But Hans-Peter did not want to exhibit in the kitchen. He said there should be a show within the show, so he did a show in the fridge. It was the fridge exhibition with marble eggs and feathers, and ever since we've talked about this idea of an interview, but Hans-Peter explained to me always that he doesn't like this format of the interview. So after many years of investigation and thinking what we could do, we found this methodology that I would send him questions and he would email back images, and that led to a book which is called Interview, which is basically the ping pong of these questions and the answers with the images. And ever since the book is out, we started a series actually, which is an exhibition which includes a lot of work of Hans-Peter from the late 60s to now, and includes also some very recent work which is shown for the first time. But all of that we are going to speak about more in the conversation, and I think we can start. So a very warm welcome to Hans-Peter Feldmann, and thanking him again for taking the time that we can have this dialogue today. And I was kind of wondering if you can tell us about the beginnings of art. Was there an epiphany, or how did it all begin?
You never know when it begins, but I decided then to study art, or to go to an art school, and I went to an art school in Austria for 2 years. And I learned there, I can't draw, I can't paint. So I knew it's the wrong way for me to be a painter. At this time, only painters were artists. Maybe sculptures a little bit, but an artist was a painter. Not like today, you can make woo-woo and you're an artist. So I knew I can't paint, I can't draw, so I left the school and went on what I did before. I clipped pictures from books when I was 5 years old. I clipped all my parents' books into parts, glued them somewhere else. And I began again with this. I glued on the back of my paintings little pictures, and that's how I left painting and came into this work with pictures, collecting pictures and making new collections or doing something with them.
And we had a wonderful conversation last night with Dayanita Singh, who is also here. You and Dayanita had a conversation about cutting and pasting, and you were telling us this wonderful story that it helps kind of to make one's own world by cutting or pasting, but then sometimes other things can come in. Can you reiterate that a little bit, this idea of making one's own world?
This cutting and pasting is a very old tradition with people. I have a lot of books at home which I bought in bookshops and on flea markets, where people cutted things from somewhere and pasted them into another book. My oldest book is from 1850, but there are even older ones, but they are too expensive to buy them. It's a tradition anyhow for people to take things from somewhere and to put them together in another book and to make a new book out of it. That's what I did, nothing else. It's not my invention. It's a tradition with many people who did this before. And even before photography, they were taking etchings or little graphics they found somewhere, or made even their own drawings and clipped them and glued them into the book. It's a fantastic collage of different things in these books.
And as you said before, you started that very, very early, because you once said that you started cutting pictures from your parents' books at the age of 5 in 1946, just after the war and just after the bombings and the trauma, and that there were no toys, so that instead you cut pictures. So that was the first book, really.
Well, there were not many books at this time, and the Germans had to hide all the Nazi books they had, because of course it was dangerous to have Nazi things in houses after 45. So there were very few books, and I was very soon through with them. I clipped everything out, and my parents were very angry. The few books I still had were destroyed by me. But I don't know, that's the way it was going on. And Later on, I also collected stamps and glued stamps next to the pictures to make another collage. I loved stamps because they came from far away. And this is for a child, of course, a point to dream of, to where does it come from, and so far away. And very, very simple, very easy.
And also one thing which came to my mind, which I thought about this morning, was this idea of the nightmare, because you said, you were telling me in our previous conversation.
Don't tell everything.
No, but the thing with the nightmare is very interesting. I'm just quoting here from a previous conversation. You said, if you have a problem, you draw it, or if you have a nightmare, if you have a real nightmare that comes again and again, you write it down. And you talk about the caves, the early caves. And you were telling me last night about the nightmare of this collection falling into the water. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, no, first back to the nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, art is a function to solve problems. That's what artists are doing since the Stone Ages. They talk always about these wonderful horses in Altamira and wonderful drawings somewhere else. But this is only books for tourists. If you go to the scientific books about cave drawings in the Stone Age, you find that all cages of the world, you find 10,000 of vulvas. That's the main object the Stone Age people were engraving in the caves. It's the same like in bars, in men's toilets. If you look inside the doors, you find the same motifs like in the Stone Age time. It's a way to express what the problem is, maybe, I don't know. And dreams are also a way to get rid of problems. And if you have a nightmare, which comes again and again, and if you write it down very, very carefully, it disappears. If it doesn't appear the first time, write it again, and then it's really finished with a nightmare. To bring things out of you by writing, by drawing, or by making something with it helps to get rid of it, to bring it really out in front of you and to look at it, and it's done. But so far, so to the nightmare.
Yeah, and there is the nightmare of this early collection. It's margarine. I don't know what is margarine in English. It's kind of fat-free butter of some sort.
In the 1940s or even early 50s, when you bought a pound of butter or whatever, cigarettes, you get a little point, and you could get for some points a picture in the shop. And you could collect those pictures to a big collection and glue into an album. I didn't have the album, I just had the pictures. And still today, so many years later, I remember a nightmare I had when I was a child, that my collection fell into water. And it was a drama for me to lose this collection, because it was all done afterwards. And I still have this nightmare in my mind sometimes. It's really strange. So you know how much important it has to be for me to collect pictures.
Now, we mentioned before the booklets, which are here in the exhibition, your early booklets. And I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about how this came about, because it's kind of interesting if one talks to scientists. Very often they remember, like Benoit Mandelbrot told me when they make an invention. Benoit Mandelbrot told me it was a rainy Wednesday when he suddenly saw the fractals. Or Albert Hoffmann told me about the day when he discovered LSD. In his, he never forgot, because he was a sort of a self-test, so he experienced, the effects of LSD, and then that was the discovery. And so scientists, there is almost like a day you pin down an invention. Obviously, these booklets with images, they're so influential. So I was kind of wondering if you can tell us about the epiphany. What was the moment you had this idea to make that first booklet?
Not like this, but I also can mention an artist, a musician, Anton Bruckner.
Yeah.
He wrote that he was in a train going to Vienna, and when he opened his sandwich in the train and smelled the cheese, he had the idea of the Te Deum in his head, in this moment. And it's one of his most important works, the smell of the cheese. That's Anton Bruckner said this.
It's amazing.
No, my booklets, I learned in school, I can't draw, I can't write. I had this painting, so I began to glue pictures on the back of these paintings. And I tried to find a way which is able for me without being very talented in handcrafts. So I thought about a way to produce pictures very cheap and not unicats, to make them more than once. And offset printing was at this time easiest way to reproduce and to make something. So I made these booklets with different one picture or more than one picture photographs, which I took myself or which I found. I didn't care where they came from. I never mentioned the name or who made the photo. It's not so important. So I printed them and put them in a nice, or in the cheapest cover I could find, and with a stamp with my name outside, everything very cheap, and gave it to my friends. It was the beginning of the booklets. So the booklets with a cord, with a string on the wall, so people could take the booklet and look at it, and lose it on the wall again. There's one photo in one of our books of this exhibition. I didn't see it myself. It was done by Johan Hunhoff by himself. I didn't come to Copenhagen for the show.
So you sent instructions and then?
I don't know. He did. I forgot. I don't know.
Yeah. And what about the book? Because it's also like an incredibly rare book, which no one can find, which is your earliest book, the one you did in Copenhagen for this show. Can you tell us about this book? Because it was kind of a summary of all the images, no?
Yeah, it's called Billeder. And yes, the picture books from which were single by piece are together in this book collected. I had two of these books at home. One was stolen in my apartment. So the last one I have, I'm hiding somewhere very deep, so don't lose it. It's the last one I have.
And one thing which is also, I think, exciting about these early books is, I was always thinking that they came out of like maybe art or other art books, but you once told me that it's actually that you really learned from the Amsterdam provost how to do books. So it came more out of a kind of an activist thing.
Yeah, in the 60s, the provost in Amsterdam were the leading young generation in Europe in many ways. First, at this time, music came from America, first arrived in harbors. And Amsterdam was the main harbor at this time where the music arrived. So I was listening mainly to Dutch pirate radio stations. They were bringing all the time the newest records they received from the US. This was not possible to buy them in shops, and not by internet, of course. There was nothing like this. And second, the provosts were long before the student revolution in Holland active. They were occupying houses and making their own press by printing them very, very cheap and very easy. And I like this very much, how you can make a magazine or a newspaper with very little money and very bad quality, but it still works. The words you can read and you can see the pictures. And there I learned to lose respect for material. You can use anything in any way as long as it comes out the way you want it. That's the main point. If you look at pass me the book. You see lips, huh? No lips, but there are no lips, There's nothing. That's paper and color, nothing else. It's only an idea. It only happens in your head. It's their lips. And you can do this very easy with a very bad photo, black and white, and few dots only. We can do it more perfect, like we tried to make it here. But it only happens in your head. It's only material, paper and color. And you can bring it down to a limit, very low and very cheap and very easy. It still works. It's incredible. And they worked with this idea to make it on a low level and still bring the idea over. And this worked with me also, and this I learned from them to be like this.
And why did you then stop doing the books? Because all of a sudden, at some point, you stopped doing them.
I made them, as I told you, very cheap. There's a grey cardboard I found in a shop, and they start talking about these nice booklets, and it's so easy done, and so they didn't talk about the pictures inside, and so I said, I make a mistake, so I stop it. If I don't get the point which I want to show inside, I make it wrong and finish it. I was offended.
So I misunderstood somehow.
Maybe.
Yeah. But it's also interesting because then many other things obviously grew out of that, and you did the Sunday pictures and you did the toys exhibition throughout the 70s. But one thing we haven't spoken about, which I thought would be interesting, because here at the Louisiana Museum there are the early booklets, and then there is a more recent work, which are the 100 Years piece, which is a piece you did after the break, and in between there is this break. And I was kind of thinking that it could be interesting to talk about this break between 80 and 89, because I think it was an exhibition in Ghent at the Museum van Hedendaagsche Kunst, which was the last show. And something obviously must have happened there because you then retired and stopped appearing in the art world for 9 years. Can you tell us what prompted that decision? Or if it was something concrete which had happened in Ghent, or it was more a general...
Yeah, the art scene was not what I thought the art scene should be. For example, I was one of the artists of the Documenta 1972. And I went there and expected people to meet there and to talk about art and to have interesting meetings and other people, And I went there and nothing happened. Nothing at all. They were sitting in the restaurant and eating and talking about bullshit. Yeah. So I went home and I was really disappointed. I was again in Documenta in 78, I think. I didn't go there even again because I knew it's not worth to go there. And I had the same feeling about the art scene and all, and I stopped to take part in the art scene. Didn't stop art. I stopped to take part in the art scene. And the job I had at this time, I was an antique dealer, was also very interesting and made me very busy also, so I didn't miss anything.
But you did lots of parallel realities because we met at the very beginning when you came back to the world of exhibitions, and we spoke a lot about what you had done during these 9 years, and there were lots of parallel realities. There was your thimble mail, that was one thing you did. I think that's incredibly exciting. It was a magazine and was also a Versand. It was a mail service, no?
Yeah, I had this shop in Düsseldorf for technical antiques. Not so normal antiques, technical antiques only. Cameras, Photographica, Geodetica, Nautica, old tin toys. And one day I brought back from China a collection of cloisonné thimbles. And I put them in the shop and they were sold right away. So I thought maybe it's a chance to make a new field in the shop and to sell more things. And I tried, and really thimbles, they're selling very quick, very like hell. It's incredible. There's so many thimble collectors in the world at this time at least. So I started a mail order shop for thimbles, and I made a magazine every 4 weeks, which was mailed all over the world with pictures and description of the thimbles and order form, flyers. And so it started to have a thimble shop only selling thimbles.
Yeah, it's very beautiful because the images are glued in.
Yeah. It was again the cheapest thing. I had somebody to glue the color pictures into the blue, black and white prints to make a catalog in color, which was very expensive at this time to do it. So to glue, very often you find old art catalogs with glued pictures inside. It was the only way at this time to make it possible. Otherwise, it would have been too expensive to make a colored catalog. Today, everything is so easy and so cheap, and it's changed.
And you did also this book Überfall, that used that as well, no?
Also with glued pictures. It was easy to make an empty book by a book binder and to print a big sheet of photographs and to cut them and put them inside. It's half the cost of a normal book.
Yeah.
And at this time, economy was always the most important thing in everything.
And another parallel reality are the tin toys. You went to toy fairs. I remember there was once you even had a booth at the Spielzeugmesse. There was a...
Yeah, I was producing toys. Well, in the 40s, when I was a child, there was no chance to get toys. People were too poor and too little things on the market. So I was standing in front of shop windows with toys and looking at them, and never got them. And when my son was born, 1966, I had the first time the chance to go into a toy shop officially and to look at toys. And I came normally out with tin toys for me, but nothing for my son. So, and this went on to a collection. I went to old shops to buy old antiques and so on.
And at some point you started to make them yourself, no?
Also, yeah. But it's another story. It's too much.
Too much.
Let's talk about the 100 years.
And before that was exactly the last question I wanted to ask you, the 100 years, no? Because we have the 100 years here in the exhibition, and those of you who haven't seen it can go and see it afterwards. And obviously the 100 years have to do with time. And always artists have told me about your work. And I kind of grew up in the studio of Fischli Weiss when I was a teenager. So when I was like 16, 17, I met them. And they were always talking about you and this importance of time in your work. I mean, Fischli Weiss, like you so much that they even always have in the studio images which they call the Feldmann pictures, which they're not sure if they're going to use. There's a box called Feldmann pictures. And Fischli Weiss were telling me about your time series, and obviously you did already in the 70s a lot of time photography, investigating what is time. So I was wondering, before we talk about the 100 years, which is also all about time, if you can maybe tell us about the time series and about time, really.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand what time means, what time is. It's very difficult to understand time. So I made pictures in different distances, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 1 minute to 1 hour, to understand what happens in between. So we have series of pictures, almost the same picture each time, but time in between happened. And it's done to understand time. I made picture of a meadow. Of course, nothing happens there. Even the grass is growing. You don't see it. So I made really extreme photo series, and I made photo series with much action in it to find out about time. That's all.
And that obviously leads to the 100 years, which is also about time. And I remember it was actually, we were working on an exhibition in Paris with Boltanski at the Musée d'Art Moderne. I think that was the first time, was one of the first time this work was shown, called Voila.
Yeah, it was really pushed by the director.
Suzanne Paget.
Suzanne Paget, yeah. Now, I had the idea, I was old. I was over 60 at this time. Now I'm over 70. To find out how old am I really. And I had the idea to go into my family, my friends, and the friend of friends, to look at people in each age from 0 to 100. So the first picture I made was a baby 8 weeks old. The last picture I made was a lady 100 years old. And every year I found a new person. And mainly family, friends, parents from friends, kids from friends, neighbors. Anyhow, it's my life, my area. And now I have a line of 100 pictures, and I'm not myself but I know where I am in which age I am standing, to find out. Look at this line I had already, and the line I might have if I'm very lucky. This was a reason why I did this series. With people I know, so I'm more close to this than anybody else, because I have more relation to the persons which are shown in the pictures.
And so you know them all?
Yeah. Well, in the end, actually, some very old people had to ask a priest I know to make a connection to a very old lady and an old man. I didn't know them really, but still, with somebody I know very well, I was brought to these persons, in Düsseldorf always.
Mm-hmm. And was there any, because it took a long time, no? I mean, it's also interesting that it took 5 years to do it. Yeah. It was a slow project.
Yeah, because I had maybe 3 persons who were 83 years old, but nobody who was 84.
Yeah.
So I had to wait 1 year. Yeah. It worked. And in Paris, I talked to Suzanne Paget and to you about the series, and they said, okay, I want to see it, make it. And I brought the parts I had already at this time, and they said, okay, we want to finish it and want to show it in the Musée d'Art Moderne in Paris. That's why I then at the end pushed a little bit.
So there was a deadline.
I couldn't push them to 83 very much. But yeah, this helped to finish the series.
And obviously, I mean, what is so fascinating is because the piece has been shown, since we showed it in Paris, in so many different contexts, and it's also time passes, and I suppose, I mean, somebody was mentioning last night that she had seen the piece a couple of years earlier and had experienced it very differently, and one obviously always looks first at one's own age, and so it's each time a very different thing, so everybody
People understand this thing, go first to their own age to see what the opposite is looking like. It means that something is working in this series.
I was also very moved to see...
One point, yeah. I was also asked, did you make the series again, not only here, also I saw it somewhere else. Of course I make the series more than once. I don't make unicats. Imagine the Rolling Stones would sing their songs only once and never again. Huh? It doesn't work. So you can make every work, if possible, again and again and again. And this is technique, photography.
So that's important. It's unlimited.
A painting like this, you can do it the same sense, but not the same painting again and again. But this series you can do again and again because it's just done by technique.
And it's always unlimited and never signed.
Always unlimited, and why should I sign?
Yeah. I was also thinking yesterday. Obviously, like when I saw actually the piece a couple of months ago, and then I was thinking about last night what had changed. I was also thinking, for example, about Joseph Artmann, and who is no longer with us. I mean, it's also about time passing, and like the founder of Museum in Progress, he's part of that. He's a picture of him.
He's in, and also his secretary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I was also wondering is if there was any kind of inspiration from August Sander for that, because sort of I was looking the other day again at Men of the 20th Century. Was Sander ever an inspiration for you?
I admire him, but I don't know. I think this technique of showing people was done already in the 18th century by painted portraits of people, which are working in the moment very much on old paintings, portrait paintings. And this tradition is going on with photography. It was done before already in painting, and Sander was one of the, I think Sander and Bechers are the number ones in photography in the 20th century in the world. There's nobody more important than Sander and Bechers. And Sander was really open new fields with his photography by looking very, very close and very, very modest and very, very undramatic to things and make a photo of them. It's the most difficult point to make things very easy, very, very normal, not dramatic, not making special effects in it. That's most difficult.
And these things, very normal things, leads us also, as you said, to these recent works which we show at the Serpentine, which are these found paintings. And it's not only the paintings where you change the eyes, or you add a red nose, or you cross the eyes with the portraits, but there are also the seascapes. And I was actually thinking about the seascapes this morning and yesterday, because we kept looking here, at the sea. And there is an amazing new piece which is shown for the first time at the Serpentine, which is a collection of many traditional oil paintings in frames, actually of seascapes. Can you tell us about this?
The motive of seascapes, sea paintings, is a long tradition in painting. You see, yes, the water and the sea, sometimes some seagulls or maybe a ship, but I don't like these. Just with the water and with the sky. And they're done by very good painters, they're done by very bad painters, they're done in small size and big size, and I collected on auctions 15 different sea paintings and put them on one wall together. And this also tells a lot about art. It talks about the quality of art, which can be very different. It can be very, very easy. It can be very sophisticated. It can be done small and big, and the frames around also tell a lot about the painting. So, and I have also 3 paintings from the same painter in this collection. So I'm trying to have the idea of a painting analyzed by showing many of them in one place and trying to start thinking about the idea of painting.
And then there are the portraits. I mean, in the show in London also there's many portraits, and some have the red nose and some have the crossed eyes. That's ongoing, no?
These portraits made in the mid-19th century and earlier, down to the 18th century, they are made instead of photography, which didn't exist at this time. Rich people asked the painter to make a portrait of them. That's not art, it's craft only in my eyes, done very perfectly by good painters, but they were ordered to make the paintings and as a portrait, and I went to change them by making them crossed eyes, both the couple, which looks very funny then when both have crossed eyes, or both have a red nose, looking very serious, and suddenly they look very funny. Trying to play with art again, with paintings, It's not art what they did. I wouldn't never change in real artwork. I wouldn't, but this is not art, it's really only just like a passport photograph. And this I think I can play with without making these painters really angry. And I delete their name in the paintings to make sure they are not misunderstood by this new idea of painting I'm working with them. Just a joke, in the moment I make a wonderful portrait of a woman, seems to be a rich, important woman in all jewelry and a very big one. I make a really blue eye, smashed in the...
And there is another really interesting connection to Denmark, because when I was a child, growing up in Switzerland, the first kind of place where I saw art when I was like 12 was the Gallery, which was a gallery in St. Gallen, near where my parents lived. And I met there Ionesco, because Ionesco, the playwright, was actually doing, lithographs and things towards the end of his life. And that was also the galleries which in the 50s and 60s had worked a lot with Asger Jorn. So as a child, I came across Asger Jorn. And obviously he used a lot of found paintings and turned them into something else. It's sort of a détournement. Yeah. So that's another connection to...
I also heard when I gave my little booklets to friends, and I saw them many years later, and they said, "So you still have the booklets?" "No, I gave it to my child, and they painted in the booklet." Wonderful, it's nice.
Hans-Peter, thank you so much. Thank you very much.